pardon me, when we have a Hanukkah Masiba at the Koil down south right now too, so I have to get back to the home turf when I finish.
There's a Koil down south?
You haven't depleted us yet. There's a halacha, somebody pointed out, there's a halacha that you can't put the Hanukkah lights higher than 20 amas from street level. The amas somewhere between 30 and 40 feet. Why is that? Because it's not visible. You don't see it. The eye doesn't look. If you look, you see it. But you don't notice it, so to say. You don't notice it. So somebody said, and I think rightly so, if you have to see the Ner Hanukkah, what happens if you see it and it makes no impression on you? So what did you have from seeing it? So obviously this whole concept of Persuna Nisa that we publicize the Nes is not only to tell us the Nes. We know the Nes, we've been taught this for the last, since kindergarten, the Maccabees, the Chashmonaim. It's got to be some kind of a practical application. So I just want to speak about maybe a couple of thoughts of Hanukkah, which as a result of the Nes of Hanukkah. One thing, you have to understand that the laws of nature, it's a very good term actually, there's a law of nature, there's chukei teva. When the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world, he created it with certain natural sequence of order of how things work, and that's how he wants it to work. That's the way it's supposed to work. There's many references in the Gemara. We learned that Daf Yomi, there was a man, his wife died, he couldn't nurse his child, he didn't have what to nurse a child, he grew a breast, so the Rabbi said, Kama mechurim zeh, how ugly is this person that they had to change the laws of nature for him. Teva. That's wonderful, it's beautiful. No. God has a certain way he wants it, and he doesn't really always like to change that. The Gemara relates the son of Rav Yosim in Yukras, he hired workers and he said he would give them to eat, to supply them with food. Came lunchtime, there was no food. So he said, well, we could do it, but he said, Elon, Haitzi Pereisa was not in the season. He said, tree, bring out your fruits so that my father's workers can eat. His father was very unhappy with that. How much did you trouble the Rebbeinu Shalom? That's not a physical trouble. The Rebbeinu Shalom is no difference to him. But changing the laws of nature is a tircha. The tirch means it's troublesome because that's not how the world was created. That's not the intention of the creation of the world. You say, there's a continuous creation, a recreation of Ma'aser Bereishis, and that's how the Rebbeinu Shalom wants it to be. Nature is his permanent desire, his permanent ratzon. Sometimes, for certain reasons, we'll speak a little bit about that, he has a different desire. We call that a nes, only because we're not used to it. Right? The water flows, you can't split water, you try it, and it runs together again. One time God wanted the water to split. To him doesn't make any difference. The Gemara says that Chanina ben Dosa poured, his wife put vinegar into the Shabbos leichter instead of putting oil. She was, maybe didn't have the oil, he was not a very rich man. So she was very upset. She said, he says, no difference to God. Well, why does oil burn? Oil inherently is combustible. No, God made it that way. So if he wants the vinegar to be, the vinegar will be combustible. We have to know why that's not troubling the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's that's not for now. But be as it may, the nature, what we call nature, that's God's regular will. Sometimes he desires something differently. We call that a miracle. To God, there's no difference to him. Not harder or easier to do one or the other. The truth is, our whole existence is a miracle. Everything that does, the system. To tell you a story, I heard it from the Rabbi from Milwaukee, the Twersky's father, the Rabbi Twersky's father, was one of his congregants had a problem with his urinary system. They sent him to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and they fixed him up, and he came back and he said, Rabbi, you know how you dance Simchas Torah? That's how you have to dance when you make the bracha sheyotza. Now he's 100% right. But the only trouble is that because thank God, most of the time everything works right, so we don't focus on it. But the human body is such a complex creation that a lot of things go wrong. And sometimes, unfortunately, we hear that just a minor thing went wrong and then the whole life changes. So we take it for granted, which really, it shouldn't be that way. So sometimes we have reminders. There's a beautiful Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah says in Brachos, Talmid Rabbeinu Yonah, is saved by when the Kiddush Levana, that's a Kabbalas Pnei Ashchina. It's like meeting up with the divine presence. What's the Kabbalas Pnei Ashchina? So Rabbeinu Yonah says because we tend to start taking things for granted. Anything that goes on a daily basis, so after a while you take it for granted. We always take it for granted. The moon is the one thing that rains and then it comes back again. So if you think of it, oh, it's gone, it's back. Oh, new moon, happy, full moon. So Rabbeinu Yonah said that's an opportunity to concentrate not on the moon, but who's making it happen. Right? That's really the idea. To focus as a Rebbeinu that's making it happen all the time. Sometimes we need something more dramatic to remind us. That's what we call an S. Really what the S is telling us to God, it's no different. It's no different. The oil burned for 8 days, it burned for 1 day. Could have burned on water. No matter. But we need a reminder here and there that I make everything happen. The Ramban is a famous Ramban. If you haven't never learned to take it in the end of Parshas Bo, a beautiful Ramban. And the end of it, he says that if a person doesn't believe that his whole life is miracles, there is no what a secular concept of nature. Things go by themselves. This happens, I wake up in the morning. No. Everything is directed and controlled by God. So it's all Nissim. He says from the Nissim Hagluyim, from the miracles that we recognize as miracles, the unusual will of God, we have to recognize that everything is miracles. But that's not so easy to remember. So every once in a while we need a reminder. Chanukah comes along, we light the menorah, we see the lights, remind us that the oil burned for 8 days, it lasted for 8 days instead of 1 day. Who made that happen? God made that happen. Why did He make it happen? So that we should remember that He makes everything happen. Once had a thought, there's a difference in custom between Sfardim, not Nusach Sfard, the real Sfardim, and the Ashkenazim on Mizmor L'Soda. Mizmor L'Soda, the Sfardim say it year-round, Shabbos and Yom Tov too. So to them, it's a kapitel Tehillim. It's a chapter in Tehillim. Like we say other Tehillim, they say that. Ashkenazim don't say it on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why? Because to them, it's in place of a carbon Torah. The Tehillim with 105, Kufay, Kuflav, says the 4 people have to bring a carbon Torah. He was sick, he recovered, went down to a trip in the ocean, came back, whatever. You have to bring a carbon Torah. This Mizmor L'Soda is in place of the carbon Torah. It's a psalm, a Tehillim that is set together with the carbon Torah, but it's in place of a carbon Torah. So we, the Ashkenazim, treat it as a carbon Torah. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, you cannot bring a voluntary carbon. So Shabbos and Yom Tov, you cannot bring a carbon Torah. Even if you're obliged to bring it, you've got to wait till Sunday. Let me ask you, how many Shabbos and Yom Tov are there in the year? 52 Shabbos and 12, 60. 300 carbon Torahs. What are you so thankful about? 300 every day, every weekday. You say, the Brian Shalom, Mizmor L'Soda, I'm bringing you carbon Torah. That's what you bring Torah for. I got up this morning, everything worked. I was able to come to shul. I made it. No accidents. I didn't trip. Sometimes people walk to shul, they fall down. Unfortunately, they do damage to themselves. Everything went perfect. Everything is working. All systems are go. If they're not working perfectly, they're still working. I'm getting along. I'm there. So that's the idea. Incidentally, I saw an interesting thing. I was reading through a Maimah that Rabbi Koppel said on Hanukkah. It's really simple, but I don't know because of translation. How do we translate Hodu? Like praise. Hodu Hashem, praise. The root of the word Hodu is Toda, is thanksgiving. He says when Hanukkah was established, the Chachamim said it's for Halal and Toda. Toda means recognition, to thanksgiving, appreciation. So when we say Hodel Hashem, doesn't mean I'm going to praise Him. It means I'm giving thanks to you. I'm recognizing what you're doing for me. I'm giving thanks to you. Not easy. So we need reminders. I mean, my wife complains I don't thank her after she made a good supper, right? You get used to it. She's a good cook. So you get used to it. We maybe say a priori, a kabbalah, things in life, we get used to it. So we need reminders. So every once in a while we get a big reminder. We celebrate a miracle. So that's one aspect of Chanukah. The recognition that everything we have is given to us by God, and that we have to remember that. That's one aspect. The second aspect, the Gemara in Erchen says that, when I go through the Gemara says it comes out for halal, you need three conditions. That it's called mo'ed. It's prohibited in doing malacha. There's no malacha. That's why Shabbos is malacha, but it's not called mo'ed. Chodesh is called moed, but you're allowed to do work, and you have to have different kabbanas. That's why Chol Hamoed Sukkos we bring you say the whole halal. Half halal is a minhag, doesn't count. The whole halal on Chol Hamoed Sukkos we say. The Chol Hamoed Pesach we don't say, because Chol Hamoed Pesach the Gemara says because you have the same korban every day Chol Hamoed. So how does Chanukah shine in there? It's not a moed. It's not prohibited in malacha. The Abraham Gazhansky, the Torah's Abraham asked this question. So he says, when we're talking about halal, we're talking about those occasions where we were physically saved. Mitzrayim also for tremendous miracles, more miracles than by Chanukah. But we were physically enslaved, and it was physically to get us out. There was a spiritual aspect too, but there was a physical redemption there. Chanukah is a totally spiritual celebration. A totally spiritual celebration has different guidelines, and you don't need this prohibition of malacha and that it should be called a moed. It's celebrating spirituality, devotion, avoda. There's a letter, the Rambam, with those 54 years from when the Greek took over Eretz Yisrael till the Hashmonaim rebelled against them. It was a terrible time. They were busy trying to eradicate Torah, not Jews, but Torah and observance of Torah, and that an Am HaNivcha chose a nation that ran contrary to the whole Greek philosophy. Everybody's created equal with the exception of slaves. Everybody was created equal. So they were busy trying to uproot the observance of Torah and mitzvahs. Interesting, Reb Samfel Hirsch notes that Jews were attracted to the Hellenistic lifestyle. Jews are attracted in general, if they're not into Torah, they're into more, let's say, sublime, abstract, intellectual. There was philosophy, there was appreciation of music, of the arts. This is all Greek Chachma, all Olam Hazeh, incidentally, we'll get back to that. But the way he explains it, it's the bridge between Chum, which is crass materialism and base pleasure, with Torah, but you can't bridge from one straight to the other. So the appreciation of sublime things, of intellectual concepts, slowly can bring a person to Torah. But that's what Greece represented, and that was the Hellenistic lifestyle, and Jews embraced that. Till the Jews embraced that, it never occurred to the Greeks to make decrees against the Jews to battle the Torah, because it never occurred to them that a Jew would give in. Yehudei Eitzalah, right? I'm a Jew, I'm hung. There's no in between. But when they saw that the Jews are not ready to be hung and they're ready to give up their religion, so then it occurred to them, maybe we can force all of them to stop being Jewish. But that's what happened. And together with that, there's never decree unless we become lackadaisical in our observance of the mitzvahs. We lag in our observance of the mitzvahs. The Bach, a famous Bach, says that the Jews were nisrashla ba'avoda, were falling back. They're lackadaisical. They didn't do the avoda to God, the tefillah, whatever they did. Didn't do it with the gusto and with enthusiasm. And then, so God takes the mitzvah away. There's a famous Rabbi Yerucham, when they made the decrees against Shechita in Poland, the Mir Mashgiach said, with a little explanation, negative commandments, Losa says in the Torah, it says what the punishment is. Most of the punishment is Malchus, this. The mitzvahs say for non-observance of mitzvahs say basically it doesn't say what the punishment is. The Yerucham said one of the punishments is that he said in Yiddish, the mitzvah wraps itself up in a suitcase and it leaves. He said Jews were not observing kashrus properly. They were guys like, they took away the shechita. Jews weren't davening, learning Mekayim mitzvahs properly. The Greeks came along and tried to take away the whole Torah. How was it reestablished? It was reestablished through Koyanim, who were the symbol of Avodah, through their Mesiras Nefesh. Through their Mesiras Nefesh, they were able to bring the Avodah back to Klal Yisrael, to get rid of the Greek, and of the influence took much longer to get rid of, incidentally, but to get rid of the Greek and then start trying to get rid of their influence was done through Mesiras Nefesh. Without that, it's very hard to do it. There has to be a drive for fulfillment mitzvahs. If they're done half-heartedly or without any enthusiasm, the mitzvah itself starts moving away. That's the punishment of non-observance of a mitzvah. I say that the mitzvah goes away. I want to relate you a beautiful story. I heard it and it's been written up now. Reb Chaim Stein, Sechet Tzadik Levracha, that tells Rosh Yeshiva's passed away last summer a year ago. He was in Siberia and he was about 26, 27. He had a group of Talmidim of Tells with him, and they all stuck together, and they were on a train on Hanukkah. So the second night of Hanukkah, they had a couple of candles left over from that they saved from Sukkot, hoping that they'd have for Hanukkah. By the second night, they didn't have any candles, so they took grease from the wheels whenever the train stopped. It was a 2-week trip. They were from Siberia. They went to Asia Minor, to Samarkand. They wanted to get to a warmer climate. So they would take out grease, and from their clothing they would pull out threads and make a wick, and they'd have, for the whole group, they'd have one licht. Fifth night, I'd say this question of fifth or sixth, it was a freezing day, and they couldn't get grease. It was frozen hard. They couldn't get it off. So they didn't have any Hanukkah left. They were very upset. So they made up, they're going to learn together halachas of Hanukkah, and that's how they're going to fulfill it. They can't fulfill it physically, they're going to fulfill it with learning the halachas. They learned the halachas, and as the evening progressed, everybody went to sleep. Reb Chaim and his kabrusa stayed up. At 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock on the door of their cabin. It's a huge Russian standing there. He says, "Do you want to buy candles?" It's a crazy thing. If anybody got on one of those trains, they sold food. Right? Like on a rest stop on a train, they sold food, don't sell candles. And the only thing he sold was candles.
Sure.
Clearly. The only thing he sold candles. Of course, they bought candles off him. Whenever they asked Reb Chaim Stein, was that Eliyahu Hanavi? He never answered. He says, you're getting the moral of the story wrong. That it's irrelevant if it was Eli. He didn't say it wasn't, incidentally. He didn't say it's irrelevant if it was Eliyahu Hanavi or not. That's not the moral of the story. The moral of the story is that if you want to do a mitzvah bad enough, the Rebbeinu Shalom will avail you of doing it. That's what you got to learn from this story. We all would have learned from this story, my gosh, Eliyahu Hanavi in Siberia in the middle of the night brings somebody candles. No, that's not what he learned from it. He learned from that if you want something bad enough, if you want it, Mesiras Nefesh, they couldn't do anything more. But if you want it bad enough, you want to do a mitzvah bad enough, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to give you the opportunity to do it. That's what he always used to say is the moral of that incident. Incidentally, he always said it over. I think it was the 6th night of Hanukkah. That's the night that it happened. So he would relate this every year. That's interesting, a whole different conclusion. But it fits in. When there's a Mesiras Nefesh, there's a desire, somebody wants something very badly, eventually the Rebbeinu Shalom will give it to you. I add a little postscript. There used to be a non-religious Israeli who I think he sold fruit off a truck or something. I don't remember what it was. And I was friendly. We used to schmooze together. And one day I told him, why don't you come on, it was at the outreach. I told him, why don't you and your wife come over for Friday night? So he says, yeah, very good, and we shook hands. Now, shaking hands in halacha has a certain halachic stringency to it. It's like a shvur. And the guy disappeared. I didn't see him anymore. I couldn't see him anymore. And I was really troubled with that. So I kept telling Brensham, where's this guy? Either he's going to come to eat for me, or he's going to release me from the obligation. 6 months later in the street, no, we're not selling a truck. I bumped into him. I told him, yeah, he can't come. His wife doesn't want to come. I said, okay, he's releasing me from the deal. If you want something bad enough in a mitzvah, you don't want to do something wrong. You want to undo something. If you want it bad enough, the Rebbe is going to give you the opportunity. So that's in the category of Mesiras Nefesh, the desire to want to do it. That's also one of the chizik that we have to get out of Chanukah, is like a reawakening, re-strengthening, and the davening, and the avodah, in general, whatever we do in the learning and the fulfillment of mitzvahs, little enthusiasm, which actually borders on the first of what I said also, because we get habituated to it, so you lose your enthusiasm. One day you do it, the other day daven, how many days you daven. Got it. You need a life, every moment, everything is keep davening for it. I started saying before, which is the third aspect, and I generally don't give mussar. When we came here, this is a Lithuanian line, but who told it to me, told me seriously, Rav Shulman, he was the Rosh Yeshiva in Slavatka, and Eretz Yisrael tells me, no, you say shmuzim, give like lectures, that's when I said, you got the right guy for that. So he tells me, you think I'm asking you to be a mashgiach? I'm asking you to be the mashgiach, the supervisor? Talk to yourself out loud. When you learn Musa and you see what's wrong with yourself, tell other people about it and help them, whatever you're doing to reprimand yourself. Tell that to other people, do it out loud. So I'm not giving Musa, but it's something that it has to be addressed. It's that also Natoyz Avram asked an interesting question. Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis LaDavid. It's a mizmar, a song for the dedication of the Beis Hamikdash. Here, tell me, I'll give you a siddur. Tell me where there's any dedication of the Beis Hamikdash mentioned from the beginning. There's no dedication of Beis Hamikdash. Incidentally, Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis, the Vilna Gaon says that's the Mizmar, like we say, LaDavid Hashem Oiri and Elul. Mizmar Shir, you say Chanukah. They rededicated the Beis Hamikdash, the Hashemai Mizmar Shir. Where's anything about dedicating the Beis Hamikdash? I'll explain to you in a minute. There's nothing in there about that in Beis Hamikdash. What he's talking about, what he's like without the Beis Hamikdash. To us, the Tana and Pirkei Avos said very clearly, Ha'olam hazeh doimuk haproizda. This world is like a corridor. Olam haba, that's the big room, the big salon. That's where you got to arrive. We go through. Being here is a means of getting there. It's not an end. To the Greeks, Olam hazeh, with all their appreciation of beauty and all the other things and the philosophy, Olam hazeh, they had the gymnasium, the gyms that built up the body, the beauty of the body. It was Olam hazeh. That stands directly, that's diametrically opposed to what we believe. We believe Olam hazeh is a means to get in Olam hazeh. It's not an end in itself. To the Greeks, Olam hazeh was an end. Was an end by itself. And to a Jew, if there's no possibility for any Olam Haba, for any spirituality, any Torah, any mitzvahs, any getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's useless. Torah's Abraham says, David HaMelech said, without the Beis Hamikdash, Shvati, but it's interesting to see how he perceived himself without the Beis Hamikdash, and this is not that the Medrashim need any approval of ours, but this is not a Medrash. This is he himself said it. He said, Mizmar Shir Chanukas Habayis LaDavid. Rashi says this is the shir that should be said at the dedication of the Beis Hamikdash. Amimcha Hashem k'v'lisoni v'lo yisimach tareh. Shivati Alecha, I cried out to you, at your penny you healed me, you took my soul out of the nether depths of Gehenna. Chisani, you gave me life from going down the bar. Usually bar means a pit over here, is a euphemism for going into Gehenna. Kiraga Ba'pai Chayim B'Tzaina, and again, In the end again, Hashem Eschana Mabetz V'Domi B'Ridit Al Shachas, what do you have from my life if I'm going to landing up in Gehenna? Will those in the grave thank you? Hayagad Amitecha. To him, life without a Beis Hamikdash, you're a sick person. It's a sick life. Not a sick person, it's a sick life. That's Mishmach Chanukah's Abayis. He's saying this is what it is without the Beis Hamikdash. He said the negative. How are we going to take this away? Give us a Beis Hamikdash. Without the Beis Hamikdash, I'm a sick person. That's a sick existence. I don't mean a sick person. They're necessarily physically sick. It's a sick existence. The Chodesh Havava says that you can have love for Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba roosting in one heart. It's not in the heart. It can't be together. It's not one is 80% important, the other one is a 20% important. No. The Olam Haba is 100% important. Olam Hazeh is a means of getting to Olam Haba. It has no inherent importance, intrinsic importance itself. Rabbi Aaron Kotler used to tell us, say it over, the fellows over talk, say it over, said the problem with the American, and he said it to B'nai Torah, is that to them, it's true, Olam Haba is 80% important, but Olam Hazeh is 20% important. This is the Yikah, this is 80% important, 75, 25, depending on how involved they are in their material pursuits. Of course, we all understand that Ruchnis and Olam Haba and Torah, that's what counts. But Olam Hazeh, like the Hasidim, you say, Bizdik Kretschmer, until you get to the inn, you also need a drink. Olam Hazeh also means something. So he said, no, that's a big mistake. Olam Hazeh is tougher, it's totally secondary. It's not a 25% ikar. You know, this is the main part, 75%, this is 25% important. No, it's totally unimportant. It's only a means of getting to Olam Haba. America doesn't lend itself to that. America doesn't lend itself to that. America first of all, the lifestyle. America exported to the whole world. America always was, with few exceptions, was a wealthy country. Let me give you an example. More from my father than from myself, but I vaguely remember it. In Europe, when you used to eat, you got a big supper. You got a good portion of potatoes, vegetables, one piece of meat, slice of meat, one fat frankfurter. That's what you got. I remember the old Rabbi in Washington Heights, Rabbi is saying, he said in German, whoever imagined that you can satiate yourself on meat, like a 2-inch porterhouse steak with a couple of French fries, it's American fresserei, it's American gluttony. But they exploited it to the whole world. It's living Olam Hazeh, having a good time. America's based on having a good time. And don't think that you can live in an environment like that without it affecting. It affects all of us. That's why I'm not giving anybody musa. It affects all of us. Let me tell you of a little incident. Rabbi Yosef Chaim son of the Rabbi Yerushalayim, yes, his first wife died. He got remarried. I think the second wife was maybe better cooked than the first wife. So he comes home one day, and the house has a fragrance of a boiling chicken soup. Delicious. The whole house is smelling like Friday afternoon. But the problem was it wasn't Friday afternoon. It was in the middle of the week. So he tells her, this is wonderful for Shabbos. For Shabbos. There is a place for good cooking, gourmet cooking with Jews. Today, you have Ami, Mishpacha, what am I missing? The ladies' magazines. I forgot Bina. Every week, there's between 4 and 8 pages on gourmet cooking. That's not Jewish. That's Hellenistic. That's the Greek influence. American, a la American. It's a Greek influence. Yeah, there was such a thing. I'll tell you, there was in Prague. It's interesting to see. Years ago, there were takonas on controlling spending in the community, what kind of wedding a person could make, what he could serve, depending how much tax he paid to the kehillah. That establishes wealth. This proves whether a wealthy man was able to invite a little bit more people, make a little bit of a nicer meal, but it was controlled. But what I found interesting in there was a limiting what the baker was allowed to bake in the middle of the week. You weren't allowed to bake these fat cream cakes that you're supposed to be saving for Shabbos, not eating on Monday morning for breakfast. They didn't let him bake it. That's interesting. Jews are more spiritual people. This was good. Everybody understands that sometimes you're in a rush. You can't always wash to eat. So you bake mazanos. But mazanos was simple mazanos, like a bun. But the cream cakes, whatever, those were saved for Shabbos or for Yontif. Didn't bake them in the middle of the week. I'm just giving you an idea how Jews lived at one time. And America stands in contradiction to that. And in a sense, that was also part of the divergence between Torah Judaism and the Hellenistic lifestyle. One was indulging himself, enjoying Olam Hazeh, and the other one was that, Olam Hazeh is a way to get to Olam Haba, but it's not an end in itself. That is a very big lesson that we need to learn over here. I have to be careful with names over here to say, but there's one of the printing houses that bring us a lot of Torah, also printed a series of 10 cookbooks. 10 cookbooks. 10 cookbooks. I'm telling you, if you think about it, it's not Jewish. It isn't. You have a cookbook on how to make a good roast for Shabbos, so you have to remember there's something that there's difference. 10 cookbooks for gourmet, and it's all gourmet cooking, but they don't have to tell you how to fry an egg in the morning. So one of the messages for it goes further, goes into clothing, into dressing. I have a son moved to Cleveland. Cleveland is a simple city. It hasn't caught up to the rest of America in the lifestyle a little bit. Even the rich people live quite simply there. So my daughter says it's beautiful. She says she lived in the tri-state area. Again, we're not going to name places. The tri-state area, you have to have the designer clothes. You have to have the label. It might be worse material, but as long as you have the label. And the kids have to have, when they go on, the pants have to have a designer label, and needs this on it, this on it. Who needs it? Clothing it to cover the body, not to make some guy rich because he's got his name on a little tag that's sewed onto the back of the shirt. Right? And they used to have tags on the inside, and now they have them on the outside to be able to see who made it. I'm telling you, it goes on and on. I only gave one example from eating. This is all not a Jewish concept, and I think Hanukkah, because this was part of the underlying struggle between the Chashmonaim and the Yevonim, is a time to focus on that also. When we see the Hanukkah, hey, Olam Hazeh is to get to Olam Haba. It's not an end, it's a means. So be zeicher to do that.
Amen. Amen.